What you're about to watch is not just a heated exchange, it's a warning flare about the state of the Justice Department and the rule of law in America. Adam Schiff didn't come into that hearing trying to score viral points. He opened with something far more serious.
Madam Chair, Attorney General Bondi, at your confirmation hearing in January, made a clear commitment you would not politicize your position. We are here today at your first oversight hearing 9 months into your tenure, at a time when hundreds of career prosecutors have quit because they were required to take unethical actions at odds with that promise, or feared that they would have to take such actions if they remained on the job. When over 1,000 former federal prosecutors have sounded the alarm about the unprecedented degree to which the powers of DOJ are being abused to go after the president's enemies. I approach this hearing with a heavy heart. As a former federal prosecutor myself, I served in a department that, whether it was under a Democratic or Republican president, would never use the office to go after the president's enemies or to hide the corruption of his friends. But today, the Justice Department has been used to cover up the possible corruption of the mayor of New York or of a high-level administration official taking $50,000 reportedly in cash in a bag, or a child sex predator who befriended the president and some of his cabinet members. And instead of preventing partisan weaponization, your department has engaged in a brazenly political prosecution at the president's explicit direction. The department has become President Trump's personal sword and shield to go after his ever-growing list of political enemies and to protect himself, his allies, and associates. My questions therefore focus on these two themes: hiding the corrupt acts of his friends and prioritizing the political prosecution of his enemies. So let me start with the shocking allegations of bribery and pay to play. 2 weeks ago, 4 major media outlets reported that Tom Homan, the president's top deportation official working in the White House, took $50,000 in cash in a bag from undercover FBI agents in September 2024, just over a year ago. According to these reports, Homan indicated he would facilitate securing contracts in exchange for money once he was in office in the future Trump administration. Reportedly, this exchange was caught on tape. Rather than pursue this investigation without fear or favor, the department and the FBI under your leadership, or that of your predecessor before you confirmed, quietly shut it down. Once news broke, your deputy and FBI director issued a joint public statement confirming that the Trump administration closed the investigation. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt denied Homan took the $50,000, telling a reporter, quote, "Mr. Homan never took the $50,000 that you're referring to, so you should get your facts straight." So today I hope you can help us get our facts straight. Was that true, what the White House Press Secretary said when she denied Homan took the money? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, as I stated earlier, I was not in office, I was not confirmed when that was handled.
So does that mean
Deputy Attorney General Blanche and Director Patel said that there was no evidence that Tom Homan committed a crime. Yet now you're putting his picture up to slander him.
No, I'm putting his picture up showing an interview he gave with, I think, Fox, in which he was asked explicitly about these allegations that he took a $50,000 bribe, and he refused to answer. He said he didn't answer the question whether he took the money, so I'm asking you the question, did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, I answered that question multiple times, and frankly,
Well, I don't think, with respect, I don't think you did, but in case I just didn't hear you, what is the answer? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, that happened prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. I said that.
Do you know, sitting here, whether he took the money?
All I know is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Patel said there was no case. And Caroline Leavitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings I know.
So
and,
was she,
Senator Schiff, if you worked for me, you would have been fired because you were censured by Congress for lying with your
We can stipulate to, you can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
Personal attacks? You've been attacking my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been attacking.
But what we're interested in,
borders are.
What we're interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
You want your
you were asked by my colleague. You were asked by my colleague.
Attacking good people.
A regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont whether you will support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Homan taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI, Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you support?
You don't have to tell me what is my decision and what is not my decision. I said
and
you
you
can
don't
talk
have
to
to.
Director
And you
Patel.
don't have to try to.
You think you've got a gotcha with Tom Homan, our border czar,
Excuse me.
who's been out there fighting for our country since Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask you a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed, I believe the American people, should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump
So
for trying to impeach
I guess the answer is you won't support that
after
request.
you now know that
So
Joe
let me-
Biden tried
let
to
me
cover up
do
Hunter
this.
Biden's involvement with
Excuse
Ukraine?
me. Let me do this because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question.
You were asked, a law degree,
excuse
Senator
me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire career.
You can attack me later, and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day to day.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be...
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair, I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now
what
the current
about the
president.
fires in California?
And
Do you
this
care
is
about that,
supposed to
Senator
be,
Schiff?
this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about
Are the riots in LA serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology.
When will it be
Your entire career,
that the
frankly.
members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly you're a failed lawyer
refuse
because
to
you don't
accept,
understand when someone can and cannot
refuse
answer
to
a
accept
question.
personal slander as an answer to those questions.
Personal slander?
With
Will you
that, Madam
apologize
Chair,
to Donald
I yield
Trump
back.
for slandering him? Personal slander.
Senator
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction into the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce, with unanimous consent, the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president.
A sense of grief. As a former federal prosecutor, he spoke as someone who once trusted the institution he now feels compelled to confront. That matters, because this wasn't framed as partisan outrage. It was framed as professional alarm. Schiff laid out a pattern that goes beyond one official or one allegation. Hundreds of career prosecutors leaving, more than 1,000 former federal prosecutors publicly warning that the Department of Justice is being abused. That's not normal. That's not background noise. That's a systemic red flag. These are people who served under both Democratic and Republican presidents, people who built careers on the idea that DOJ does not exist to protect friends or punish enemies. And then comes the core of the clash, the Tom Homan allegations. The claim is staggering on its face. According to multiple major media outlets, the president's top deportation official allegedly took $50,000 in cash in a bag from undercover FBI agents with the promise of facilitating contracts in a future Trump administration. Reportedly, the interaction was recorded. If true, that's textbook pay-to-play corruption. Schiff's point wasn't that Homan is guilty. His point was that the investigation itself was quietly shut down, not debated publicly, not resolved transparently, but closed. And when the story broke, the response from the administration wasn't documentation or evidence, it was denial, deflection, and personal attacks. That's where Pam Bondi's testimony becomes the real story. Over and over again, Schiff asked a simple oversight question. Did he take the money? And over again, Bondi avoided answering. Not because the question was unclear, not because the answer was classified, but because answering it would require taking responsibility for transparency or acknowledging that the department refuses to provide it. Notice the rhetorical shift. Instead of facts, we get character endorsements. Instead of evidence, we get "I trust her." Instead of accountability, we get attacks on Schiff himself. That's not how oversight works. That's how stonewalling works. And Schiff made something else very clear. The Attorney General does not get to pass the buck. When Bondi told him to talk to the FBI director, Schiff pushed back for a reason. The Attorney General is the final authority. Oversight doesn't mean chasing answers through a bureaucratic maze. It means asking the person in charge. What makes this moment especially revealing is the contrast. When it comes to the president's perceived enemies, indictments are demanded loudly and publicly. When it comes to the president's allies, investigations disappear quietly. Schiff called that the Justice Department becoming the president's sword and shield, a weapon against critics and armor for friends. That phrase matters because it captures the constitutional danger here. DOJ is supposed to belong to the American people, not to any president. Once prosecutorial power becomes a loyalty test, democracy starts to erode from the inside. The long list Schiff read at the end wasn't filler. It was a ledger of unanswered questions. Ethics approvals for foreign gifts, interference in Epstein-related records, discussions about indicting political opponents, firings of career prosecutors, disregard for court orders, and selective enforcement of the law. Each refusal to answer isn't just an inconvenience, it's a breach of the oversight function Congress is constitutionally required to perform. And that's why Schiff insisted on entering letters from former DOJ officials into the record. These weren't activists. These were career professionals warning that politicized justice weakens national security, undermines counterterrorism efforts, and damages public trust in ways that can take decades to repair. Here's the bigger lesson viewers should take away. Corruption doesn't always announce itself with a confession. Sometimes it shows up as silence, as evasions, as "I don't recall," "I wasn't there," or "ask someone else." Oversight hearings exist to pierce that silence. When they fail, the cost isn't partisan embarrassment, it's institutional decay. This isn't about liking Adam Schiff or disliking Pam Bondi. It's about whether the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country answers to the law or to one man. If you care about equal justice, about a DOJ that protects democracy instead of power, this is exactly the kind of moment you should be paying attention to. Share this, talk about it, demand transparency, because accountability only works when the public refuses to look away.